everyone.
Hi everyone, happy Halloween.
Welcome to our webinar about the timeline editor. We're just going to wait a couple minutes for maybe a couple more to come in. The poll has started, so we would love for you guys to complete that poll and so we can find out more about you. Awesome. So I can see from here there's a mix. So we have some people here who do social media videos as well as YouTube and training videos and spread between agency and freelancers. So that's nice to see. So keep them trickling through. Awesome. Janie, shall we kick off?
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. So to start off, my name is Carol. So I look after the content here at Genny.
And my name is Janie. I look over all things related to customers here at LOVO. So nice to have you guys here today with us. So in terms of what we're going to go over, we're going to do a brief introduction to LOVO and who we are, what we do, and then we'll jump right into obviously the main topic of today's conversation, which is our timeline editor and reviewing kind of like giving you a quick tour and going over obviously the main features, and then we'll wrap things up at the end with the Q&A section, which obviously is my favorite part. Cool.
Okay, great. So let's get started with the intro to us. Oh, a bit of housekeeping first.
Yes, for everybody who's here, if you look at the down, obviously, bar of your Zoom room, please notice that there is the chat and the QA to make sure, please to write all the questions that you have in the Q&A box. Obviously, feel free to use the chat to write messages, but please save your questions for the QA box, and we'll get to them at the very end. I'll be making sure to look over them, and so making sure we can get to all of your questions. And so please keep that in mind as we're kind of going about our conversation today.
Awesome.
Cool. So a little bit about Genny. We are an AI voice and content creation platform. Exciting to say that we have over 1 million users. And we have over 500 voices. So as many of you guys know, we have pro, rapid, and global voices. And with our global languages, we also are in over 100 languages and accents. And so we're all excited to have you today. And hopefully you guys have had some time to look around in Genny and start creating your first few projects with us. Great. And so this is our timeline editor, and this is kind of a version that we have put here for the sake of our webinar today. And so we wanted to go over all the components that comprise all the features that you can do. And so please note that for the timeline editor is only available in advanced mode. And so you'll notice in simple mode, the workspace is different, more optimized for you to create content in a faster way. And so with the timeline editor, it obviously allows you to do more features such as add voices, the subtitles, the audio and visual layer. And we'll kind of go over all of the things today. And so with the first layer, you'll see is the voiceover track that'll generate, after you've selected your voice and entered your text and hit generate. And so if you hover over the little icon in your actual Genny projects, you'll see that it'll hover with the voice name, and this is especially helpful if you have a lengthier project with more than one voice. And so you'll have like 1, 2, 3, and it'll have the icons faces and the specific names, and so like Sophia, Thomas, Christy, and so you'll be able to see like that. And then the second layer is the subtitles. You can create subtitles with our auto subtitle generator, or be able to manually type in your subtitles, or if you have your own SRT file, you can upload those based on your project needs. And the third layer is the audio, and here you can utilize Pixabay, our royalty-free library, to add audio or special effects, or just be able to add your own original music by adding from the resources. And then with the last bit of the visual, you can add images or videos, and so either media that works for you. And to also, you can also utilize Pixabay with our royalty-free library as well, to add that content. And so with the overview, you know, we wanted to now take you into the Genny workspace to kind of give you a tour there, after we've gone over the components that make up the timeline editor.
Okay, awesome. So let's jump over. So we'll come into the Genny workspace, and I think most of you are probably quite familiar with this area. And this is where we'll start off. Now, as Janie had mentioned, in our project space, we will have be working in the advanced mode today, because this is where the timeline editor will sit. So if you have multimedia videos, images, etc., this will always be the advanced mode. So we have one here, Zip by Magic, that we made earlier. And this is our timeline demo. So here, we're going to take you on a quick whistle stop of all the basics. Now, I think most of you probably are aware if you created projects already, but this is where the play button and the controls for your preview. So you can go back or forwards by 15 seconds. If you do have a longer project, this is quite useful. And then you can also see your timer here, as well as play in up to 2 times speed. So again, like for those who are creating much longer projects, you have, you know, a long time, like this is a quick way for you to speed through and get to where you want. And also here, this is the audio. Again, this relates to the playback of your preview, not what sound or level of volume that your project will generate at. And also, again, we do have a magnifier here. So if you have a smaller project, maybe it's in the 30-second range, which is indicated here. We can zoom in and you can see things on a much granular level. If you have a lot longer projects, when it's coming into like a few minutes, you can zoom it right the way back, and it will give you a good overview and perhaps a quicker way for you to jump into where you want. So these are the sort of few features, the basics, as it were, the foundations of our timeline editor. And you can see here we have our voice. So I have Sophia. So as Janie mentioned, if you hover over it, will tell you the voice that you're using. And then we also have Thomas, who appears here as well for us. I have a audio level. So this is just a piece of music that is playing in the background, and then an image and various videos here. So this project would be I guess, a short demo video for timeline editor, seeing as we are talking about that today. So I wanted to sort of dive right in and show you some of the more advanced tools when you are working with lots of different types of media and also multiple blocks. And the first one that you probably have seen, maybe not aware entirely of the name, is the snap tool. So this is located here. By default, this is always going to be on, and you can toggle it off just by clicking on it. And what this does, it just helps you keep everything in a line. So this is super useful when you have lots of blocks and you want things to sync up at the same time, and you don't really want to have to sit and zoom in and make sure that they are perfectly aligned. This will automatically tell you whether you're aligned or not. So here, I can just let go of it and it will move. And this one you can use pretty easily, and it will just automatically snap where you want. Now, you can force this. If, for example, you wanted overlapping audio, there might be a point where you want 2 voices talking at once in a dialogue, for example, or you want to minimize a gap between sentences. You can push yourself through, and it will override it. It will indicate here if there are any overlaps. And then you can drag it back out if you don't want that. Now, if you wanted a much smaller pause, you can turn this off, and then you can just edge it across slightly. But if you turn it back on, when you pull it back, it will just snap it into place. And again, this can be the same thing applies when you're using video clips. So for example, here, at this point, I do have some screen recordings demonstrating, for example, how to use the timeline editor. And I want it to line up with this particular block. So it is quite helpful and intuitive. So it will line it up automatically. Let me move this yellow line out of the way. So this will automatically align it up to where this block starts, or perhaps you want it to end at a certain point. Again, like its job is to make sure everything is like neat and aligned. And this is super helpful, especially for any of the medias, to make sure that everything stops exactly where you want it. So very useful tool. I use it a lot and was very happy that this is part of our timeline editor. The other section we'll talk about is the pin tool. Now, the pin tool, again, not everybody has seen it or understands or knows where it is. We basically right click on our mouse and we'll see this indication here, which is the pin tool. And as it's indicated with this pin, what that does, it locks it into place exactly at this point. So for me, this is at 18.26 seconds. And so if I wanted to generate a new block or add some things in, this is not going anywhere, along with the blocks behind it. This can be quite useful, for example, if I wanted to add in an extra screen recording and some extra text. It's a quick and easy way to move a lot of blocks at one time. So for example, I can just pull it across here. And with these ones, the other alternative way of moving multiple blocks is you can press Command or Control, depending if you have a Mac or Windows PC or laptop. And you can then, once you click Command and Control, highlight both, and then you can also drag it. And for example, here, what I wanted to show is wherever this yellow line is, if you go to now add something in, so for example, I might want to add in another piece in my folder. So I will add in this title page, for example. It will automatically jump in wherever this yellow line is. And sometimes people forget that. Sometimes they wonder why it doesn't pop in where they want it to. Make sure, always look for where the yellow line is. If it is, for example, pulled away back here, this image would have landed here, but I wanted to make sure that it came to this point. So I just sort of dragged it here and it will pop into where it should be. Now, this is an image or a video, and I can pull it to a couple seconds long. And then I want this to start once this image has finished. So then I will just drag it till it lines up. And then again, I can do the same by pressing Control or Command, highlighting the blocks I want and pulling it across, and then it will all just line up. And my audio, I would like it to be a bit longer till the end of the video now, and I'll just drag it across. If I decide, oh, you know what, I don't like this pause, I want this to start while this sort of title image is playing. If I unpin, this will automatically close the gap and it will jump back to its original place. So it can be used for multiple reasons. It's very handy if you do have multiple blocks, as I said before. So these are kind of the two very key useful tools that we have found work really well when you have multiple things happening at the same time. And one thing that I would like to notice, you probably have seen this missing from here, is my subtitles. So these days, subtitles are obviously very important. And the one tip I would definitely have is to make sure that your text blocks, that your script, that your voiceovers are exactly how you want them to be. Because when you generate your subtitles, they will be synced to these blocks. And so they will automatically align to wherever that comes into. And if you decide last minute that you want to change or move around things, it can be a bit more difficult with your subtitles because you then also have to move your subtitles to align these as well. So one of my tips that I say is that typically once you're happy with the content, you're happy with the script, then add your subtitles in as the last point. So for here, I'm just going to do auto subtitles and it will just generate and it will just populate straight down. And as you can see, it is all synced up to where I want it to be with terms of the pace and how you're generating everything. And these obviously you can move these exactly to how you want, and all those kind of things will all appear in your preview so you can check those out yourself. And that is, I guess, like the sort of the main areas to look through with your timeline editor. Are there any questions? Do you want us to review anything sort of in more detail? Let us know either in the chat or in the Q&A. Janie, if you could have a quick look for us while we're here.
Yeah, we got one question, and I'm happy to answer this now. We got a question about someone who wants to use Genny for larger text for audiobooks and asking about the limits. And yes, you definitely can. In terms of limits, I'd just be curious to understand what you're creating and the length is. But other than that, like we have various Genny users who are also creating audiobooks with us. So definitely welcome. We're excited to have you here. For any specific questions, I wanted to direct you to our hello@lovo.ai email, and we'll be able to kind of handle a lot of the specific questions. And thank you so much, Carol, for walking us through the basics and obviously the more advanced tools that we have in the timeline editor. I wanted to discuss some of the questions that I have seen on the customer side that I think are great uses of, we've now learned a lot about, what Snap is and how to use Pin. But like in the day-to-day of when you're using Genny, maybe kind of the things that you might come across and you're like, yeah, like I wonder what, how do you, fix this problem that I have? So the first question is, really the audio volume is quite low. Is there a volume adjustment? And the answer is yes. Obviously we walk through kind of the top bar here. There is the volume button, but additionally, if you select the voice tracks and right click into them, you will find that they also have a volume adjustment button here. And so you can kind of adjust the individual tracks how you need them. And this is obviously where we found Pin. So that's one of the ways that you could adjust the volume, specific to kind of that voice track that you're working with.
Right.
Yeah, the next question we have is, my producer has added some lines to 3 voice projects. The changes caused overlap in each of them. Am I able to remedy this, i.e. space out the timeline so there's no overlap, or do I have to redo the entire session? And totally hear this question in the sense of, you have already generated your projects and now you have to edit and make some changes. And so we'll kind of go over this in terms of more of the Snap and advanced Snap and Pin tools and how you can work around them.
Okay, yeah, awesome. So say, for example, we do have some overlaps. Now, typically when you add in a new block somewhere, these will all make spaces for you. So it shouldn't happen so much, but if it does, for example, my advice would be, so let's just sort of push this over and we just notice that we have a overlap in this section here. So if you do have a lot of blocks behind it, the fastest way would be to pin the top one, pull it across. Your snap tool should be automatically on. If it's not, just toggle it on so you see that it's on, and then it will help you align everything up. And again, as you notice with these ones, you can highlight these, pull them across so that everything is synced up for you. So we should be able to avoid that happening. And if you are unsure if something is overlapping, for example, just by accident, your snap tool is off and you're not sure if everything's equally overlined, what you'll always notice is that this little sort of warning sign will come up against any blocks that are overlapping, and that will help you identify if there are any. And again, as I mentioned before, sometimes people like to have them overlapped, but typically if you want them to be neatly aligned up, it's most recommended to keep your snap tool on for that.
Cool. Thank you so much for Carol for going over that. Yes, and definitely utilize, kind of the signs that Genny will automatically kind of guide you with the lines and the warning signs for the overlap. Our next question that we have is, if you have an existing pinned audio and generate more voiceovers, what happens?
Okay. So what will happen is, again, as I mentioned before, when you pin something, that is locked in place. So like nothing is going to move this around. So for each individual block, which is here, if I wanted to add in a block after it, So I just can click enter, or you can click add a new text block, whatever you prefer. And if I just put add in a new block, what you'll see will happen is that it will generate into the right place, i.e. after this one, but it will appear on top of it. And that is purely because you have manually pinned that in place, as you can see here. It is laying on top. So if that happens and you're like, oh, why is it overlapped like this? It's because something is pinned. And if you want to either move this to another space, either put here, for example, you can do that. And then, it will help you add space into it. If you did it by mistake, you can just click delete backspace and it will get rid of it both up here as well as here. And then if you wanted to make room for it, again, with your pin, you can pull that across. So that's what happens. It just, the pin overrides, basically, is what it will do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, definitely hear this question in the sense of like you're working and you might need to add edits to your text and you're like, oh, well, like I've already generated my voiceovers. But yeah, so the way, obviously our workspace will interpret it is by chronological order. And so, if you insert a new one, it'll add accordingly into that right place. You can obviously utilize the pin and the snap tool to your, editing advantage and like how you'd like the voices to overlap or not overlap. And so while you're creating, if you get to that point and you obviously don't want to get stuck, definitely just add a new text block. When you select, it should automate the placement.
Yeah.
And our next question that we have is, how can I add a few seconds pause in my text-to-speech project? I need to add time control setups for my dictations, and I do not see this feature. So this is a great question, especially because our rapid voices do have a pause functionality built into the pause to the text containers, but for our pro and global voices, I can understand, there's not this available, and so a workaround for this is definitely utilizing the pin feature and the benefit of the timeline editor in terms of visually being able to see like where the exact second where you'd like to add your pause.
Yeah. And a good indicator for this is, so we have these in 10-second blocks, and each individual, I guess, notch represents a second. So for that, if you needed to sort of zoom in and be able to move it across by 2 seconds, for example, here, or a second, you can do that in a more sort of granular way here. If you need to add in pauses at just the right amount of time, it's very helpful if you are syncing it up with a video or with extra images, etc. So that's a very useful way of doing that. And just going back to your original question, the first one, Janie, about volume.
Mm-hmm.
So all our blocks and all our media will always start with 100%. So anything that has sound in it, you can change. So not only with the actual text blocks, but also with any audio and with any video, if there were any sound, you can change these as well. So everything can be changed to volume, not just our text blocks.
Got it. Cool. Thanks, Carol. We actually do have a question in our Q&A box. This person asks, on my Genny, how do I get subtitles on it as it doesn't come up on my editor? And so we can go over this again. Imagine that the subtitle track here in green doesn't exist. Yeah.
Very quick. I'll just highlight them all here and then click delete, so it's gone. So as I mentioned before, you'll see this on your left-hand side. Subtitles is right here. So when you have your text or when you're ready for it, as I mentioned before, recommend highly to use this as one of your final steps. Click on subtitles on the left-hand side, and you'll have a few options here. So auto subtitles, so this will take your existing script and just automatically create them from that. Manual subtitles, so if you want to add extra parts, so for example, if you are doing closed captions and you might want to add in extra parts in that, you can do that here. You can also do this with subtitles. You have the manual ability to edit those as well. And then if you already have a SRT file that you want to add to this, you can do that here. So this is where you find it, left-hand side. click your auto subtitles, and once it's generated, it will sort of pop straight into there for you as an extra line in your tool editor
Yeah.
timeline.
Yeah, and I just want to point out here, it's a little hard to see, it's a little small, but you'll also see the timestamp on the left side of these subtitle text containers. And so that is also an indication of where the subtitles will exist on the track. And so you can edit these here, and they should update for the visual component of your subtitles at the end. And as Carol has mentioned in the earlier, please generate these at the end of your project to, obviously make it so that you are not duplicating work yourself and you are doing it on one soup, and you'll be able to export after you create the subtitles.
Okay, awesome.
Great. Yeah, that was our last question in our Q&A box. Please drop any more questions that you have. As we have a few minutes before we wrap up today. Great.
So let's hop into our main screen here. One thing we wanted to also let you know about, if you weren't aware, is that we have a really useful and very helpful Discord community. So here we do have some great members, as well as our team online, who are able to help troubleshoot. We also have a really great channel, which we love to encourage people to post their content that they've created with Genny to inspire and to share with others. And it's just a good place to learn tips and tricks, to get some ideas. And as I said, like it's also a useful place for troubleshooting. We will say that any sort of account related information we cannot answer on Discord, and that is best directed to hello@lovo.ai. But anything else, if something, when you're generating it, you want to change the sound of something, or you want to know how to do something, it's a really great resource for that place.
Yeah, and wanted to also shout that today our monthly newsletter went out, and so we hope you'll check it out. We had a contest for our October submissions, and so a lot of the work created by our fellow Genny users are on there. And obviously, this month is spooky season, and so a lot of our a lot of their content is themed. So we hope you'll check it out. We also have a few tips and tricks in there, and obviously, if you have any ideas for future webinars or things you'd like to see more from us, please let us know at hello@lovo.ai.
Yeah, excellent. And do we have any other questions before we run off?
Yeah, actually, we got a question. Can you take a completed project and create a new one in another language? If I'm understanding correctly, you have voiceovers and you'd like to create in a new language. If you could clarify your question, I'm happy to answer it just before we're up on time.
So I think, from just talking through everything, I hope this has been like really useful. And we will also love to be able to do more webinars where actually we get to feature you guys. So in terms of being able to speak to and interview and talk with our actual like LOVO users and how you're using it as part of your workflow, these kind of things we really love to find out more about. So, these kind of things is as we sort of progress with our webinars, we'd love to be able to feature you on side, and, perhaps even create something together or like talk through something that you've made would be really interesting for us. And I think for other LOVO users to hear about as well. So if that is something that you find really interesting, like please reach out to us either through Discord, through our email, hello@lovo.ai, because we would love to hear about your stories as well.
Cool, everyone. Thanks so much for your time today. Have a great rest of your day.
Okay, thank you so much, guys.